Welcome to another Dragonlance Saga review episode. It is Bakukul Yurth Green the 15th. My name's Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review, my spoiler review of the Maelstrom. The Maelstrom's Eye, actually, by Roger E. Moore. I will be spoiling this story, so if you don't want to know it, stop watching now. Now, I would like to take a moment and thank the members of this YouTube channel and invite you to consider becoming a member by visiting the links in the description below. You can even pick up Dragonlance gaming materials. And at the time of this recording, Dragonlance is actually on sale up to like 40% off on DM's Guild and DriveThruRPG. So it's definitely worth checking out. I could not do this channel without those PDFs or the books. But whatever, right? Let's talk about this little doozy here. I started reading this. I'm going to give you my review here in just a second, but I just want to give you a little preface, I suppose. I started reading this thing and I was not really into it. Roger E. Moore isn't the best author, in my opinion, but something about the characters really turned me around. And even though, we're jumping in and we're sort of retreading old ground, this feels a little bit more Star Trek to me than it does, I don't know, whatever Spelljammer is supposed to feel like, but like Star Trek in like a D&D universe. So if you're into that thing, then this is definitely your cup of tea. I'm now halfway through this series, so I can't stop now, right? There's only 3 more books, so I've got to eventually get through them. The problem is that the last book is the most expensive because of its rarity. So I'm making a call out to anyone who may have that book. If you ship it to me, I promise to take good care of it and I will ship it right back to you. And I'll pay for the shipping for it to get to me if you have a copy that you'd be willing to lend me in order to read and finish these reviews. I'm not ready for it yet, so don't pull the trigger or anything. But if you are interested in a little bit of a book sharing program, and equally if anyone wants to borrow any of the books I've got, I'd be willing to do the same sort of trade. Shoot me an email, info@dlsaga.com. I would appreciate it, and it would allow me to not have to drop $200 or whatever it is on a $6 paperback, which is just ridiculous. And for all those people out there trying to sell your paperbacks for exorbitant amounts of money, you suck. Just put a period at the end of it. All right. Now, the way these reviews work is I'm going to give you my pre-written review, and then if you have any questions or comments or thoughts, throw them up in the live chat, and at the end of the review, we'll just sort of riff for a little bit. It's Friday. I got nothing going on. Solange. Just sitting here sipping on some Pinot Noir, and it's delicious. John, thanks for joining live. How you doing? Yeah, he was only briefly mentioned, if memory serves. But again, that first book, Beyond the Moons, that was a Dragonlance book. That was not a Spelljammer book. That was 100% just because it was all contained in Dragonlance. The second one was supposed to be Forgotten Realms, but you only got like this much of Forgotten Realms in it, and it didn't even really feel like Forgotten Realms. This one was all in space, and it was just sort of, I don't know, it was different. We'll get into it. Let's get into it now. I'll do this. So, here we go. Teldin arrives at the Rock of Brawl to meet the elves of the Imperial fleet about his cloak. He wanders the rock and meets Gedrella Goldring, a female Kender, only to realize that she is in fact a Kender. This guy sort of freaks him out. They get along really well before he figures it out. He thinks it's just this young girl that's like abandoned or something, and so he's taking like this big brother role to her character, which I thought was really endearing and really cool. There's a lot of shady, shitty dudes out there. Not all of them would befriend and take care of a stranger. I don't know. I count myself among those people. That's not a fucking predator. I'm sorry, not a predator. So I really respect and tip my cap to other people of the same cloth. Anyway, they get along. She seems to be immediately attached to him and actually helps him find the elves. Now, upon meeting the elves, they give him all the information they have about the cloak being made by the Starfolk, as they term them, from their own poems and fables, though they don't exactly know who these first star-sailing beings were. They used it to pilot the Spelljammer, the first fabled spacefaring ship. So whoever has the cloak can control the massive city-sized ship. And this was already suggested in the last book. So again, we're retreading old ground. He's relearning the same stuff over and over again in this book. The elves offer information on how to find the Spelljammer by visiting a Falmadaratha called 169. This being, who lives thousands of years, can actually help locate the Spelljammer, supposedly. So they end up sending him away with a gnome named Diffidionizer Artefactos Jammermaker, who is just the most knowledgeable person about Spelljammers. It's part of his life quest. He returns to his shop to his ship. I got a spell check issue here. He returns to his ship, the Probe, only to discover that Aelfred, the captain, had already hired the Kender, Gale, supposedly at his request. So the Kender lied to become part of the crew. At the same time, the novel explores the war between the Tarantula's fleet and the Imperial fleet, basically orcs versus elves. The fleet admiral of the Tarantula's fleet, Admiral Halker, is invited to meet with a lich named Skarkesh about a proposition, and he takes his general, Kobaz Hamarka Vor, with him. Now, Vor is immune to magic and poison, and he's a half-orc ogre. We're introduced to them by an assassination attempt, presumably by the Imperial fleet. They meet the Lich, only to discover that it's not actually a Lich, but it is undead, choosing to take the form of a Lich. This is supposed to be like this big question mark out there, like, who is this really? What is this being? Why does Vor not trust this being? And it always lands on the place of, who cares? It's just super flat. Again, Roger E. Moore is not the best author. So Skarkesh, the supposed Lich, discovered the cloak originally encased in stone, but he was betrayed by his servant who stole the cloak, which ended up in the hands of Rygar, female captain, that ended up giving it to Teldin. And so we find out the original owner of this cloak was the Lich, and it was stolen from him. And just by happenstance, crazy chaos of the universe, that's how Teldin ended up with it. Now, the Lich knows that Teldin is on the Rock of Brawl and hired the Tarantula fleet to find him and take the cloak. So apparently, if you touch the cloak and you're magical, you can then scry the location of the cloak later on and sort of track it. So that's what the Lich has been doing this whole time. It seems to me that this Lich is actually just an undead Neogi who is betrayed, but I don't know for sure yet. The probe fills up with the elven supplies, astonishing that they're actually able to be given them. And with Diffid, the gnome, and Gay, the Kender, aboard, they head off to Iron Peace, which is a gnome sort of safe haven or military-industrial complex where Diffid had originally come from, in order to find information about 169. Now, Diffid has actually met this fowl before, so he is supposed to be their guide, as it were. En route, they're caught up to and cut off by the Tarantula fleet, which is the orcs here. So they smash a hole in the hull of the probe, and immediately the Imperial fleet uncloaks. So it turns out they were being followed by the Elven fleet the whole time, and now the Elven fleet is trying to rescue Teldin and the probe, the ship named the Probe, from these orcs, revealing that they were following Teldin and attacks the orc fleet. So the Lich Pyramid Spelljammer, also known as the Battle Fray, also enters into the battle. So we have the orcs who are working on behalf of the Lich, hunting Teldin. We have the elves who are guiding Teldin to the fowl and who are following them in their cloaked ships in order to make sure that he actually gets there. As the probe's helms are destroyed, they are dead in the water, and Teldin concentrates on the cloak, which then slows time. He then pilots the probe down to a lake in Iron Peace, and as the elves and orcs battle each other in the space above this sort of donut-shaped world. The probe crashes into the lake, and many of the crew die or are lost. The gnomes of Iron Peace move to action, defending their skies from the invaders and rescuing the crashed crew. Teldin is surprised because he's pulled out of the water by none other than Gamja, the hippopotamus humanoid that he met from the first novel. who they ended up being really great friends, but who at the end of the first novel, as far as Teldin knew, jumped over to a Neogi spider ship and it ended up crashing into Mount Nevermind. So he assumed that Gamgee was dead. Surprise, surprise, Gamgee is very much alive, and he's been working with the gnomes this whole time. It turns out, again, Gamgee survived the crash of Mount Nevermind and took a newly crafted Spelljammer to Iron Peace. He has been the commander, or the captain commander there, and is thrilled to see Teldin again. When the probe is destroyed, the two armies' fight ends after a few days. Teldin is told by Diffid that the Elven leader wants the Spelljammer just as everyone else does. In truth, he was told of Teldin by Valis Leafblower on Toril in the second book. So the elves, the orcs, the mind flayers, the Neogi, the ancients, and whoever else knows about this Spelljammer ship wants the cloak in order to pilot the Spelljammer if they could ever find both of them. And that puts Teldin in the middle of a whole lot of conflict. When healed, he heads out to find 169 and get some answers about the Spelljammer. But Gamgee has decided to go with him on the Spelljammer that the gnomes ended up giving them as a replacement ship. A mysterious Neogi also enchants someone, we don't know who it is, to be his spy on Teldin's ship on behalf of the Lich. So, Teldin was trying to bathe after changing into a gnome, and a Scro snuck into the building and attacked Gay. Teldin came out, ends up killing the Scro. Suddenly, an attack from the Scro that the elves tipped the gnomes off to began in the skies again, causing everyone to fight for their lives. Teldin was grabbed by Gamgee and taken to the ship, the Perilous Halibut, which is the ship the gnomes are giving them, and they fled the planet and the Scro. This infuriated the Lich as the Scro lost many men and ships in the battle. They fled to wild space where the Lich divined where they were going to, and the Scro came and attacked them again. This time, many orcs and gnomes died, and they narrowly escaped as the Scro ship nearly broke apart in the attack. They fled to something called the Herd Sphere. You know, we have Herd Space, we have Krynn Space, we have Gray Space. Herd Space is just another crystal sphere, another world, ostensibly, which is a massive sun with people living on the inside of the edge of the crystal sphere. So you can imagine that each sphere houses a whole solar system worth of planets. So you can imagine the scale of this sphere. Well, this sphere, all the people live on the inside edge of it, like Hollow World or Inner Space or something like that. So it's this immense, massive, like, land that people come into. And the sun is just sort of floating in the middle of this sphere, which means they have these creatures which are of immense size, like larger than thousands of worlds put together scale. You know, some of them, are only a couple thousand feet high. Some of them are 10,000 feet high or more. So these are massively large creatures that leave these indents in the outer edge of this sphere, which end up being lakes and oceans and stuff because of the size of their footprints. And they just sort of move around the sphere at their own leisure. So they flee to this herd sphere, which is where the Foul are supposed to be, which is a massive sun and people living on the inner edge of the crystal sphere itself. They crash land into one of those footprints, which is a lake, but it has anti-magic properties. So as soon as the Spelljammer ship hits that water, it ceases to work, stranding the gnome ship until it's able to be dragged out of the lake. So just before the crash, Gay is getting closer to Teldin, and Teldin is realizing that he actually kind of likes her. So we have a bit of a love interest between this human and this Kender, which is kind of weird on the surface, but then you just take a step back and you're like, well, they're both adults. Who cares, right? Like if they get along, love is crazy. Just let it happen. But he is scarred from his last love betrayal from the last book, and all of the friends that he's lost. So he's sort of protecting himself. He can't get close to anyone because he knows they're probably going to die because of him. And he can't trust anyone with any secrets because he's been betrayed this entire journey by everyone he's ever met, except for Aelfred, who's the current pilot of his ship. So they attempt to drag the Spelljammer out of the lake, and they're approached by the rastipedes, which is an ant-like centaur species. So instead of having a human front of the horse, the centaur, it's like an ant. Teldin negotiates a friendship with these creatures and realizes that he's actually massively allergic to them. And he starts sneezing and swells up, gets hives all over, struggles to breathe before leaving their company. They're all going to help the gnomes drag the ship out of the lake due to his friendship brokerage. The lake also subdued the magic in Teldin's cloak, so now the Lich can't actually track him anymore. This causes some real problems between the Lich and its forces and the Scro, who were hired by the Lich, who has lost huge numbers in its hunt for Teldin already. So they're already having a problem with this whole plan. When the perilous halberd is repaired, they continue on their journey. Diffid starts looking for the fowl in this massive sphere using this little binocular type box called his Thing Finder, which actually works, and it does locate the fowl. Then Teldin uses it, and the fowl actually looks right back at him through the Thing Finder and starts speaking to him psionically. And 169, the fowl's name, is constantly telling him, you need to look behind yourself. Look behind yourself. And Teldin doesn't really understand what he's saying, and so he actually physically looks behind himself, and he sees this huge fleet of Scro incoming. So whoever the spy is for the Lich has been signaling the Scro to find them. And so that's why they're able to catch up to them wherever they are. Teldin sees the large force coming toward them. Aelfin demands Teldin takes control of the ship and uses his cloak to outrun them. And doing so, he nearly gets them all killed until he speeds toward the fowl. This sphere hosts massive creatures, tens of thousands of feet tall, who with whole biomes living on them. It kind of reminds me of, did you guys ever see The Neverending Story? And there's this turtle with like this sort of island on his back. There's stuff similar to it in different mythologies, like world turtles and stuff like that. But anyway, that's kind of what this reminded me of. They're so large that they actually have forests and stuff growing on their back. Anyway, they find the one that the fowl is living on and at the top of a horn and land beneath the horn just near this redwood forest. They begin on foot to trek up to the horn, and a giant cyclops comes out of the woods and attacks them, just as a butterfly spelljammer appears. This is from the Elven fleet. So and the elves have been cloaked, following the orcs. The orcs are following the spy that is tipping them off to where Teldin is at all times. And so now Teldin's starting to question, are these elves actually working with me, or are they just trying to grab the cloak off my corpse? It's kind of freaking him out. Anyway, damn, see, now I lose my place because I just sort of riff too much. Gamja is screaming at Teldin to get onto this elven ship, and Teldin finally confirms his suspicion that Gamja is working with the elves. Teldin no longer trusts Gamja, his oldest friend in this whole adventure, and when the elves try to get him aboard, he ends up evading them. The Cyclops destroys the elven vessel, and the gnomes destroy the Cyclops with the remains of the Thing Finder that blew up in Diffid's face. The fowl appears and tells Teldin about the cloak being the ultimate helm. So now we know the name of the cloak, the ultimate helm, which is meant to pilot the Spelljammer. Again, retreading old ground, we already knew this. But it's not the only device out there with that purpose. This is a surprise, because now we know that the cloak is not the only thing that can pilot this, allow someone to pilot the Spelljammer. There's multiple other items, not all of them are cloaks. Also, the Spelljammer is alive in some way, and it was from a broken sphere, but nothing more is really known about it. So the Spelljammer, which is this mythical first spacefaring city-sized ship that is so powerful that everyone's looking for it, can be piloted by the cloak that Teldin has that everyone else wants, and the ship itself is alive. And I don't know if any of you have seen Event Horizon, the horror film, which is great, by the way. That's what this reminds me of, this living ship. So anyway, Fal heals everyone and tells them that they didn't have time as the enemies are approaching again. So General Vor of the Scro discovered that the Lich Skarkesh was charming some of his men and planning to sabotage him after he acquired the cloak. Rather than accept this fact, he took his fleet and attacked the undead Lich's pyramid ship, and he discovered that it wasn't a Lich at all, but it was actually just a Neogi undead wizard posing as a Lich, which was my suspicion. Point for Adam. Vor killed him, but was damaged by his acidic ooze that he threw in his face, and now he's unable to speak. They took the pyramid ship and returned to hunt the elves in Teldin. So Gamja was tied up for suspicion of sabotage with the elves, and when he came to, they questioned him. Sylvie, the helmsman of the gnomish ship, but formerly the Probe, and is also Alfred's girl, she uses magic on him and realizes that he's actually telling the truth. Gamja had no idea that the elves wanted to harm Teldin at all, and he was just being used because he's an honest, open, trusting person, which is a problem when you're dealing with any other creature, because everyone lies, cheats, and steals, apparently, except for Gamja. So as they started untying him, the elven fleet appeared in the sky, and a ship came down and started to attacking the elven ship. Attacking the people down there. Sylvie ends up being killed, which freaks out Alfred. He's crying and bawling over a corpse. Gamja is trying to get Teldin away from these elves who are now actively shooting at them. And let's see. Gamja was shot, and the elven commander was about to kill Teldin for the cloak when Gamja threw the elven commander at the ship that the commander came in, which knocked the ship out of stasis and then crashed and exploded, killing the commander. Just as the Scro came out of orbit and started attacking the elven armada that are right there. The pyramid ship crashed directly into the armada ship, bringing it down on top of Teldin and Gamja, who at the last second were saved by the Fowl. Now, the Fowl put a psionic image in Vor's mind, so that when the pyramid lowered just to height, Vor jumped off, saw Teldin laying there, grabbed the cloak, threw it back up to the ship, and then he was going to run and kill Teldin, but the ship started to abandon him on the planet, or on this creature's back anyway. So he starts running after the ship, trying to catch it. It ultimately led to the idea that this creature Uso, who was Vor's wizardess slave, sort of a changeling, she fooled everyone, and she took off before Vor could get aboard with the intent to find the Spelljammer herself. This is it's like one of those race to the treasure type stories where everyone's betraying everyone else. You never know who you can trust, but you can trust someone just so long to get you from point A to point B before they sabotage you. Well, this is all coming to a head now in this story. So little did she know that after the elves killed Sylvie, Skarkesh's charm spell wore off of Alfred, who is now vowing revenge on the orcs. Ultimately, it was the elves, but the orcs were the ones that were there. So it was Alfred who was telling the Scro about the movements against his will, which is a huge shock because I actually thought it was the gnome. So they did surprise me there. He sabotaged this pyramid ship, which then plummeted to the ground and killed everyone aboard. General Vor, now stranded on the back of this animal, sees the real Teldin with his cloak and Gamja approaching him through the smoke and debris. Realizing that it was all fake before, he moves in to attack. Gamja intercepts him, only to be knocked out by Vor. Vor is incredibly powerful. Teldin shapeshifts into Vor, and then they do this sort of battle, this mano-a-mano battle. The problem is that Teldin's not really a good fighter. He's just not good at all, even with the cloak's power. And Vor is. And Vor, anything Vor touches negates all power. He's anti-magical. So he can't be poisoned. No spells work on him. Anything that hits him that is from a magical entity or item doesn't work. So it's really just like scrapping, you know what I mean? He ends up being way too strong for Teldin. Literally steps on his skull, fracturing his skull, knocking him out. He's ready to... He literally takes the cloak off of Teldin, which everyone has been trying to do this entire series so far. Vor successfully does it, but he didn't count on Gale the Kender coming out, picking up Vor's weapon, and unloading it right in his face. So Gay is the greatest Kender ever. She's nothing like any Kender you've ever met before, but she's awesome. And I love it. So just then, Gay appears with Vor's harpoon weapon, unloads in his face. She actually has fallen in love with Teldin, and she is going to do anything for him, including letting him move about his life so that he can not worry about her and not worry about getting her in harm. So, you know, if you love him, you got to let him go sometimes. So she takes the medallion that the Lich had that Vor took off of its corpse, which is supposed to be used to track the Spelljammer. She doesn't know this, but that's what it does. She also takes Teldin's cloak from Vor and puts them both with Teldin so that when he wakes, Foul, this gigantic slug is what it actually is, tells him everyone has left and that he'd better leave too. He has the cloak, he has the medallion, he has everything he needs to find the Spelljammer and to helm it. Now, the elves, the remaining elves who had lost a massive amount of their number, almost their entire armada, are now like, let's go after Teldin. They're like, no, we're not going to go after him. He just killed everyone. Everyone who's ever tried to find him is dead or dying. We are almost all dead ourselves. We need to go back to our leader and tell them everything that happened. And, you know, they sort of wish Teldin Godspeed on his journey. So now Alfred's dead. Sylvie's dead. Gale has left him. Teldin only has Gamja with him as a partner again, and Diffid the gnome and the gnomes that were on the halibut ship. What was it called again? The Perilous Halibut. So the end of the book is them leaving off to go find the Spelljammer. It was crazy story. It was, you know, at the end, it was just like a constant, the orcs always found them. We understand why they were finding them, but it was like every step they could take, the orcs were 2 steps ahead, even though they were always incapable of actually stopping him or grabbing that damned cloak until the very end when it didn't matter. And then Vor died from, you know, Gay busting him in the face. It was crazy, man. It's a wild, weird book. I don't know. It wasn't my favorite of them all so far. So far, still the first one I thought was the best. Second one was okay. This one, less so. It took me a little bit longer to get into. But again, like I said, I am going to be reading them all ultimately between Dragonlance series or Dragonlance books. So I will get through them and I'll share my thoughts with you. Let's see. Trees90, thanks for joining live. Oh, well, hey, you don't have to watch the whole thing. I appreciate you. You know, whenever you can check it out. That's great. Solid Crumby, haha. How you doing? It's going great here. Thanks for joining live. JB, what's up? Good to see you. Let's see. There's a copy of the last book on eBay for only $63. That is cheaper than $200, but it's still a bit more expensive than I want to drop on a novel. You know what I mean? And it's not even like a special edition or a leather bound. It's just a mass market paperback. I don't know. I might end up doing it anyway, but I'd like to reach out and see if any of you actually have the book and would like to loan it to me, because I will definitely take good care of it. Jade, thanks for joining. Good to see you. Sadly, you never got to play Spelljammer. I've never actually played it either. And in fact, this is my first introduction to it, these books. And then I got the accessory, the AD&D second edition Krynn Space, accessory. And it was pretty interesting, actually. It made me actually turn around and like Spelljammer as an idea, because let's be honest, you can't be a rock hurling through space without a solar system, because you need some sort of heat source. So whether that's internal to the planet or whether that's external in the form of like a sun, for example, you need that heat source. You need to be the right distance away from it, the Goldilocks zone, in order to have life exist as we know it anyway. So it makes sense that if there's a vibrant world of Krynn, then there would be a sun for Krynn. We knew there was. But that there would be a solar system for Krynn. And they're not literally the gods, even though some of these planets are named after the gods. And the gods are sort of above and beyond this, solar system, the Krynn space, crystal sphere. So I don't know. I kind of like the idea of it because it marries a little bit of a whole bunch of fantasy with a little bit of science fiction. It's kind of fun. I don't know if I'd ever actually use it in a game, to be honest, but I like the idea of it. See, any of my dudes here ever hear of a Spelljammer captain named Chandrasekhar. Not me. You have an ebook copy if you want them. Oh, if you have an ebook copy of the final book, if that's what you're talking about, hells yes, I would like a copy of that. That would be great. How does one get you to run a game? Me? Time, man. Everything with me is time. I've planned on running different editions of D&D and different game systems in Dragonlance specifically on this channel for a long time. But the truth is I'm putting out at least 3 episodes a week, and that takes a significant amount of time. And what you guys don't really know about me is that I have a career. I have a profession, that I'm an art director at an ad agency. So that takes up a significant amount of my time. I have a family. I got 2 kids and a wife. I also have other YouTube channels that I produce content for, much less frequently, but still. So, I've got a Star Wars one, I've got a hiking one, and I've got a horror podcast. So we, review films, books, games, comics, stuff like that about horror genre. So I've got a lot of stuff that I'm doing. I just don't really have the time for a game. Ultimately, what's going to happen is that Dragonlance Readings series, I'm going to run out of comics to read. So that'll open up some of my time. And then the Dragonlance Recipes series that I'm doing, I'm going to run out of recipes eventually. So that'll free up some of my time. So I suspect that once I run out of recipes, once I run out of comics to read, I'm going to stop those playlists and I'll just pick up a game and just sort of run my own game. So, okay, I will keep you guys in mind. I'll definitely need players. So, you know what I mean? And it would just be fun, get together, just goof around about Dragonlance. The way I would run them, though, is I would have very tight campaigns, a small handful of episodes for, sessions for the campaign, and then do something new. Because the truth is I'd like to sort of highlight the fact that Dragonlance may have come out of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but it's not tied to it. Dragonlance is just a campaign world that you can play with any game system. I'm going to do it with XDM2E. I'm going to do it with Saga rule system. I'm going to do it with the different versions of D&D. And who knows what else. I mean, the fact is I just want to tell fun stories, have fun doing it, and have it all be within Dragonlance, because Dragonlance rules. It's really that simple. So, all right, I'll keep you all in mind, and I'll definitely let you guys know when I get around to doing it. 100%. All right. Well, that is all I have for this episode. I've got dinner and family to go hang out with for the rest of the evening. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate the live interaction. I appreciate your interest in these videos, not just this one specifically, but just the Dragonlance ones in general. They're not all winners, all these videos that I put out, but it is all with the intent of just sharing the wonderful world of Dragonlance. And that's really what it comes down to, I really enjoy the series. So anyway, that is my review for The Maelstrom's Eye by Roger E. Moore. What did you think about the Spelljammer campaign world? Does the inclusion of Dragonlance races keep you interested in the novels? You can always email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I'd like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. All of this goes to let other Dragonlance fans know about this channel and its content. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. My name's Adam, and until next time, Slanjavar. Yeah, I'm having Jade on this show on Sunday. That's going to be a lot of fun.